Good morning. It is 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific. I'm Jose Diaz Balart. We begin this hour with breaking news out of Israel, where outrage continues to grow today after the deaths of 6 hostages shot point blank by Hamas as IDF forces were nearing their location in Gaza. This morning, the largest general strike since the start of the Israel-Hamas war took place across Israel. This as Prime Minister Netanyahu faces new and growing pressures to reach a ceasefire. Meanwhile, at the White House, this hour, President Biden and Vice President Harris are set to meet with the U.S. hostage negotiating team in the Situation Room. Joining us now from Tel Aviv is NBC's Matt Bradley. Also with us is NBC's Gabe Gutierrez and Admiral James Stavridis, former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO and NBC News International analyst. So, Matt, what's the latest there in Israel right now?
Yeah, well, we're seeing right now kind of the end of what was supposed to be a massive strike that was supposed to sprawl across the nation. And really the intention was to bring Israel to its knees. That was really what the protesters had asked for. They want to put the government on notice and force their hand when it comes to these negotiations to try to get some sort of hostage deal that would release what is almost now about 100 remaining hostages who are still in the Gaza Strip. Quite a few of them, dozens of them actually, are thought to have already been killed, either from their own wounds that they sustained on October 7th, or from Israeli bombardment, or by their own captors, which is what we saw over the weekend. That is what sparked this latest round of massive protests. Hundreds of thousands of people who were in the streets all across the country, arresting traffic, bringing this country to a halt, and expressing just an emotion that we've seen on the streets for the past several months, but one that we haven't seen expressed this forcefully before. They're hoping that the people in the halls of power will hear their voices. I spoke with one of the top opposition figures, Yair Lapid. He's the head of the one of the more centrist parties here. He's a major prominent opponent of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He was walking amongst the protesters, actually on a footbridge above these sprawling protests last night. I asked him, why has there been no hostage deal so far? Here's what he told me.
Why? Because the government failed to have a hostage deal, even though the circumstances allowed it, and everybody who is on the professional side of the negotiation have said that the deal is doable. So this is why all these people came here, because they understand we can have a hostage deal, we can bring them back home.
So it's not just Yair Lapid, it's not just politicians who are saying that. You know, of course, everybody's blaming Hamas for the deaths of these 6 young people, and all of them were either 40 or younger. They're also blaming Benjamin Netanyahu, and of course you're hearing an opposition political figure. But this was the mood on the streets. They are joining Yair Lapid in their anger, their outrage at the political class on the right. And this has put them on notice. We still haven't seen any real expression of change from Netanyahu or his right-wing partners, that they might try to compromise on this deal, that they might try to make changes to bring it to yes. But at the same time, everybody here is very certain that it is Benjamin Netanyahu himself who is standing in the way of these hostages coming home. Jose?
And Matt, I understand that the funeral for the Israeli-American person that was killed by Hamas is actually happening right now.
That's right. We're starting to see that happening. That's starting right now. His parents, Hirsch Goldberg, Poland, they were there. The procession went from their home through the streets of Jerusalem. This is obviously an extremely sober moment for so many people, not just here in Israel, but also in the United States, after those who saw this couple, these parents, appealing to the entire nation in front of the Democratic National Convention. It was one of the more memorable moments of that convention, but I've spoken to these parents, my colleagues here have spoken to them. They have made the rounds in front of media and in front of the public over the last year. They are an outspoken voice when it comes to freeing these hostages. And now their worst nightmares have finally come true. And, it just goes to show that when you talk about the rage on the streets, there really is also just genuine agony from so many people here in Israel.
Matt Bradley, thank you so very much. Appreciate it. Now, Gabe, meanwhile, what do we know about this meeting at the White House at this hour?
Hi there, Jose. Good morning. Well, yes, President Biden and Vice President Harris are scheduled to meet with their national security team in the White House Situation Room this hour. Now, we're here in Pittsburgh, where later on today, the president and vice president will make a rare joint appearance together on the campaign trail. But as you said, Jose, first, they're meeting with their national security team this morning. Now, we understand President Biden is returning from his home in Delaware to the White House before later on today coming here. And Jose, over the weekend, we saw those written statements from President Biden and Vice President Harris. The president saying he was devastated and outraged when he heard this news. Vice President Harris calling Hamas an evil terrorist organization. And yesterday, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met virtually with the family members of those remaining hostages. And according to a written statement from those relatives, they said that Jake Sullivan told them that the next few days will be critical to securing any type of ceasefire deal. Of course, Jose, this has been a frustrating year for the White House. They have repeatedly said that they've been working around the clock for this ceasefire deal. Again, stakes incredibly high right now. And the president and vice president meeting with their national security team this hour in the White House Situation Room, Jose.
Gabe Gutierrez, thank you so very much, Admiral. Just want to start your conversation with you on your reaction to the death of these 6 hostages. They were able to survive for so long, only to be shot as they were about to be rescued.
Yeah, unbelievably tragic and terribly often this is how the story ends with hostages. And I'll tell you why. I've been involved in many of these hostage rescue attempts over the years. The captors have a protocol that if they hear shots fired and it's approaching, their standing protocol horrifically is simply to execute the hostages and withdraw. I'm sure that's what happened here. It's a mark of complete inhumanity and barbarism on the part of Hamas. And I think it speaks volumes of the foe, the implacable foe that Israel is engaged with.
And Admiral, these hostages were held, shot, and killed in Rafah, an area that the world has been asking Israel not to go into. What's your reaction to that?
These are incredibly hard choices. If it were me advising Prime Minister Netanyahu, I would have started advising take the ceasefire deal months ago. And here's why. Because in effect, Israel can kind of have its cake and eat it too. They can take a ceasefire, take those hostages back, and at that point, the IDF still has options. The IDF can say, the Hamas is coming back, we'll go back in. What would they have given up? They would have given up some Palestinian prisoners. I think that would have been a reasonable swap, frankly. And that's why you're seeing probably close to 1 million protesters on the streets of Israel. And again, population adjusted basis, Jose, that would be a day in the United States where 35 million Americans were out protesting with one voice on a critical issue. We've never seen a protest like that, nor has Israel.
And Admiral, this morning's meeting in the Situation Room, what exactly do you expect them to be covering?
I think that the tone of that meeting is going to be present Israel and Hamas with the final opportunity, last exit before the bridge, if you will. It's going to be maximize pressure, pull all the strings on our side, pressuring Israel, and asking our Arab partners, Qatar and Egypt, to do the same with Hamas. Because if we can't settle a ceasefire now, in the wake of these horrific executions, it's unlikely to me that there's going to be an opportunity in the future. This really feels to me like the last chance, and that's what you heard National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, who has been on this relentlessly, that's what you heard him say in the last 48 hours.
Admiral James Stavridis, always a pleasure. I thank you very much for your time. And
Thanks,
joining us now is Jonathan Deckel-Hen, the father